and you will see the brilliance of this movement. Now, the difficulty with communicating in these ways is that our society has changed. The culture has changed. In the 90s, many of you will be familiar with the whole self-esteem movement. Right? We had teens and adults of all kinds that were really wrestling with self-esteem issues. And so every communication that went out was, we have to find a way to increase your self-esteem. You have to find a way to have more positive self-image. And those things are all well and good. But one blog writer would argue that, oh, we're good to go, Jim? All right, wonderful. Here we go. Let's enjoy Keenan. And we'll get back to it. Oh, I'm so excited. This video has over 4 million views. So 4 million people have sat for 3 minutes and watched him do this. I'm one of them. The tough thing is, Keenan doesn't even know the words. That's good there, Jim. Keenan doesn't know many of the words to the songs that he lip syncs to, so he just moves his mouth. So if you want to get way to get paid, is just film yourself moving your mouth to your favorite songs. And talk to me with my new camera. We'll put it on YouTube and we'll make you a star. Okay? Well, like I was saying, is that we had this whole self-esteem movement where we needed to find ways, people needed to find ways to increase their self-esteem. So we found every avenue possible to do that. And then we find ourselves in the early 2000s and even up until today, finding ourselves in a market of people that are so self-indulged, that people are so inward focused on themselves, that people like Keenan and Phil and Shay Carl and Dave Days, and I am sending this video to them too, so no, don't disrespect fellas, but we're so focused on ourselves that it makes it so difficult for us to have real relationships. Because the way we communicate now is not the way I'm communicating with you. It's not through verbal conversation. It's through electronic means. And so these folks have taken over the internet. Facebook is probably the biggest example, where who would have thought that my 80-plus-old grandfather would be on Facebook and would send me messages and would look at the photos that I post. It's a wonderful way, however, though, for our families to stay in contact. Over Christmas Eve and Christmas Day, I obviously was here in Moncton, didn't get a chance to go home and visit with my family in Ontario. So what I did was I brought them into my living room through the internet. My mom had a camera and I had a camera, and we just broadcast what was happening in their living room, and so I could see what they were doing via Skype, and they could see what I was doing. And so Christmas Day, we'd already exchanged our gifts. Mom and them were up a little later. I was there when Mom and Dad were woken up from their Christmas nap, and then I was there watching them open gifts that we had sent them. So the internet, for us, for me, has been a great way to communicate, but it's also been a downfall for me as well. Did you know that there's almost nothing we do today that isn't blogged or Facebooked or tweeted? If I did something really stupid here this morning, I can guarantee you that Jamie would have his phone and would tweet, or Joanne would post something funny on my Facebook.
I already did.
That's just the way things happen. This is the way that our culture communicates. And but there's some, when someone in our culture is having a rough time, they just tell us online. Gone are the days where you pick up the phone and say, "Hey, listen, I need your help." I'm so guilty of this. I'd much rather. I did it today. Someone told me to make a call, and I sent the text, and I probably should have called, but I did it today. But when people are having a tough time, they tell us online. When they're serving others, when they're doing something positive, they tell us online. And when they're serving others, despite having a rough time, they tell us online. There's almost no thought or feeling or inclination or impulse or attitude that we don't share with everyone who will listen or everyone who follows us. On one hand, such transparency can be very valuable. It's certainly more honest than holding everything in or acting like we're fine when we're really not. On the other hand, though, there's a fine line between transparency and vanity. Authenticity is great, except when it's not. Do you know anyone like that? The kind of people that just tell you stuff so you can be more focused in on them? I know for a fact that I've been that person sometimes. And truth be told, no one really wants to be around me when I'm like that, because I can just drag them down. Or the people that you know can just drag you down. However, there's a flip side to the coin. Almost overnight, the budding world of social media has revolutionized the way our culture communicates. Even our vocabulary has been affected. Suddenly people are tagging each other, tweeting about themselves, and liking everything they see. For the first time, it is possible in our world to have friends that you've never even met. I'm going to share an example of that in a minute. Those conversant in the language of social media rarely use complete sentences or even complete words. You want to know how I spell the word you now? Just the letter U. Yeah. Or when I want to spell your, like you are awesome, I just spell you are. That's how I spell it. Even in my emails to Pastor Dale, I'm like, how are you doing? How are letter U doing? In a formal email to my pastor. Sorry, Dale. We'll fix that. It's funny to consider that not too long ago, though, surfing was just a water sport and a Yahoo was a crazy person. But not anymore. Social media is also changing the way that people spend their time. Recent stats from Nielsen indicate that Americans, and I would bulk us Canadians, spend 906 million hours per month using social media. Twitter has over 100 million users. YouTube serves more than 2 billion, or shows more than 2 billion videos a day. And Facebook reports that worldwide, its 500 million active users spend a combined 700 billion minutes on the site each month. That's roughly 24 hours per person, which is a lot of time to spend checking statuses and changing your profile pictures. So what are Christians supposed to think about all this? And how can we exercise biblical discernment in the way that we use this new media? On one hand, social networking websites provide numerous benefits and opportunities. Many of the ministries which I'm involved in, like our District NYI or our local youth group, utilize social networking tools to dispense resources and keep people updated with ministry news. Social networking can be a useful tool when it's used to communicate the right things, messages that honor Christ, exalt His Word, and direct people to profitable tools for spiritual growth. But social networking can also be abused. When it consists of nothing more than random babblings and personal monologues, it can become self-centered, unrestrained, and narcissistic. When it consumes our lives, it can be addictive and controlling. Used unwisely, it is filled with potential pitfalls and temptations. For those who follow Christ, we are called to submit every area of our lives to His Lordship, including how we use social media. I was watching Dr. Phil a few months back, and there was a lady on there who used Farmville. Now Farmville, for you farmers, is basically an electronic way to grow a farm. So you plant your crops and you come back in a few hours when it tells you to come back, and you do whatever you need to do to make crops grow, and then it gives you another time to come back, and you come back and you harvest your crops. And if you don't come back in time to harvest your crops die, and your farm gets smaller. It's an electronic farm. And this lady on Dr. Phil was so addicted to Farmville, at points she would tell her daughter that the internet wasn't working. She would go and unplug the modem and would tell her daughter that the internet wasn't working. And then she would send her daughter outside. And once her daughter got outside, she would go and plug the modem back in so she could have more Farmville time so her kids couldn't use the internet. So Dr. Phil very politely and promptly looked at her and said, listen, enough of the electronic gardening, go outside and plant your own garden. If that's what you want to do, if you want to garden. That's the way our culture does things. We just seem to waste time. And I'm one of those. So, the question I started with was, would Jesus tweet? Would Jesus use social media if He were alive and walking the earth today? And the argument would be yes, in certain circumstances. And there's three groups of people that Rianne talked about a few weeks ago that Jesus worked with. And we're going to look at them very briefly. The masses, people that Jesus spoke with, were the masses. The examples of this would be the feeding of the 5,000, the Sermon on the Mount. Things probably would have been a lot easier for Jesus if He could have just sent a tweet or drop a post on someone's Facebook wall communicating these truths that are found in the Sermon on the Mount. You didn't have Jesus pulling aside people in the story, except for the young boy and the few disciples when they're delivering the food. But Jesus' purpose was not to pull each person that was there, the 5,000, and have personal one-on-one conversations with them. The message was meant for all to hear and for all to consider. We don't read about the life change that came from the boy who gave up his lunch, or what happened to those who were told about the meek But we can assume that the teachings of Jesus here, in the broadest sense, accomplished what they were supposed to do, which was just a mass way of communicating. So I would argue, yes, in this case, Jesus would use avenues of social media. The second group of people are the disciples. Jesus communicated with them in many ways, and I would argue as well that Jesus would use some tools in social media. One would argue that it still would have been appropriate to use the means of Facebook and Twitter here to get his point across. We in the social media world would utilize websites like Foursquare. If you don't know what Foursquare is, it's just basically another way to tell people where you are. And so I want you to know that I am the mayor of Lutes, Mountain Church of the Nazarene. And I'm the mayor of my house. And I'm the mayor of Marcus's home. And I'm the mayor of Jean's restaurant. And I'm the mayor of Boston Pizza. And I'm the mayor of a lot of places because I use places like Foursquare. You just tell people where you are. And based on how many times you check in there, you become the mayor. You become the person that's most famous for going to that place. And so I won't tell you how many times I've been to Jean's. I like their Western sandwiches, however. But Foursquare, I think Jesus would let people know if he were communicating these stories today, he would let them know that I'm in the middle of the sea and I'm about to ask Peter to come walk out on the water with me. Or he would give a status update and say, check out this photo. I'm about to send all these demons into the pigs, and the pigs are going to run off the cliff. Check out this video. And that's how Jesus would communicate, possibly through Foursquare. Can you go to the next slide for me there, Jim? And the next one. This summer I had the privilege of going to Greens Lake. And many of you have never seen photos, so I'm going to expose just 2 small photos still, but nothing humiliating, because Greens Lake Cottage is awesome. But this here is the site of the dock, or just from the dock, looking across the little inlet where the Thistle Cottage is. I took this picture just after I fell into the water. You go to the next slide for me, Jim. Here's the motor and the gas tank that were on the boat at one time. But I got up early morning because the way the Thistles operate at the cottage is that you fish mid-morning, noontime, but you don't really fish up early in the morning. When my father used to always tell me that's the best time to fish. But you fish whenever you can because you're on holiday. So I wake up at 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock in the morning to go fishing. So I asked Grandpa Thistle's permission, and I said, Grandpa, do you mind if I take the boat out in the morning to go fishing? He said, no, my boy, you go ahead and have the boat. So I didn't wake anybody up. I loaded my tackle and my rod into the boat. So I sat down, and he's got a little seat. And so I didn't take into consideration of my weight at the time. And so I sat down in the corner of the boat. And sure enough, didn't the corner of the boat go under? And then half the boat went under. And then the motor fell off. And then the gas tank is upside down, floating in the lake. But my first reaction was not to run and go wake Grandpa up from the trailer. My first reaction was to make sure my BlackBerry wasn't wet and to tweet about it to let people know, because nobody would believe that I sunk Grandpa Thistle's boat at the cottage if I didn't put pictures of it up on the internet. So you go to the last one there, Jim. This is just proof, because there was a lock and there was a chain and everything on there. I think Jamie and I wiggled it loose the night before when we got stuck in the weed bed. But anyways, the seat is not attached to the bench any longer. The seat was floating. And so I sat on the dock and I took these photos so that people would know that I almost sunk the boat. And so that's all I'm going to show the cottage. But that's the way that I think that Jesus might have communicated at one point too. Just to let people know the miracles. If he had a cell phone,